Hello and welcome to On Point. I am Bianca Sanchez. If you think social media influencers live glamorous lives filled with free trips and gifts, some content creators want you to think again. Many influencers of color are speaking out about the pay disparities in the industry. They say white influencers are still being paid more and they are given more job opportunities. The Institute for Women's Policy Research reports Black and Latino women earn 20 to 25% less than white women, but that's just in general for all jobs. Influencers have no pay standards to reference. The Verge reports that many influencers are unsure of how much they should be getting paid for the content they are creating, since there isn't a union to reach out to or coworkers to ask about what is expected. Business Insider reports, since the racial reckoning of 2020, marketers have been more willing to work with influencers of color and engage in conversations about inequality. So, who are these social media influencers advocating for equality in pay and representation for their work, and why are they making their push now? On Point's Liz Campos has more.
Thanks, Bianca. Joining me today, we have Chazlyn Stunson and Valerie Lozada, and let's get this conversation started. So my first question actually is for you, Val. And that question is, why do you think there has been a recent push for influencers to get paid or are demanding pay?
I think because there is such a huge demand for influencers in general right now. Like, we are just the biggest asset for brands in general. In terms of advertising and content creation. And so I think that we have more leverage now to say, like, I want to get paid for this. And I think that we have more advantage now. And as we have become more popular, more of a popular asset, yeah, we're able to get paid now.
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and ask the same question to you, Chazlyn. Why do you think this has been such, a recent movement that's really started in full force on Instagram?
Yeah, I think people are starting to realize that this is honestly like influencers are modern day marketers. Like, long are the days where companies are having these huge budgets and doing all of this in-house stuff. I think user generated content is easier for brands and it's a lot of work. Like, people realize we basically do it all ourselves, the contracts, like the creation, the styling, the makeup, literally everything. And so for someone to do all of that themselves, you kind of should be getting paid just like you would be if you were doing it anywhere else. So I think it's just like the realization that that's happening. And then more influencers are kind of like teaming up together, and we're kind of like collectively putting our foot down, so that we can make sure that we're getting paid fairly, because it's a job just like anything else.
Yeah, and so when you say teaming up together, what does that look like to you? Does this mean, you have girls coming together and advocating against a brand very publicly, or what does that look like?
Yeah, for me personally, a lot of my friends and I just kind of like share what our rates are, which is like something super intimidating that I think a lot of people are uncomfortable doing. But the more comfortable you are doing that, then you can like know that everybody is collectively charging like the amount that we should be, like our worth, basically. And so you want to make sure that your friends aren't getting underpaid. You want to make sure that you're not getting underpaid. And it's kind of just cool to like talk with people and see, like, especially what certain companies are paying. That way, you're not getting cheated out.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So my next question to you will be for Val. How do you determine your pay rate as an influencer? What process do you look at and what goes into that number?
I think that it just really depends. Like, I feel like we still haven't been able to have like a standard for the payment, really, because it really depends on your audience. It depends on the quality of your content, on how long it takes, on everything. It really just depends so much. And it depends on the brand, how big they are, what they'll be using the content for. So it really just depends. For me, I just give whatever rate I feel that that project is worth. I don't have a specific rate. But I also look at content usage and stuff like that, and whether I really want to work with a brand or not. So it really just depends. And I feel like it's the same for everyone. I feel like everybody has a very wide range of fees.
Yeah. Alrighty, so my next question will actually be to the both of you, and I'll start with Chazlyn for this, is why do you think paying influencers is so important as opposed to maybe a gifted collaboration?
How I see it is just because it is like any other job. I've seen a lot of people actually say that like clothes don't pay the bills, and like you're not going to be able to take a piece of clothing and give it to your landlord or for your bills. So it's like we deserve to be paid. We're putting in so much work of like beautiful content, and content matters. It affects so many people. Like, I feel like we subconsciously don't even know like how influenced we are by influencers. And so to just be paid for, you know, doing that is like a huge thing. And when you're being gifted something, like the brand is just like, that's just easy for them because they have so much product. So I just think it's really important that, you know, gifting is great, but we also have to realize that like it's a job and regular jobs get paid money. So we should as well.
And then, Val, the same question to you. Why do you think it's so important for influencers to get paid versus gifted campaigns?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's just, yeah, it's a job like any other. It is so extremely time consuming, and it is worth a lot to the brand. It's very valuable for them to have content and have proof of concept, and our trust and our audience.
Yeah. So to actually give our audience a little bit more of background, what does a typical shoot look like for you? What hours are you putting in? What's the method behind all of the content you're producing?
It takes a really long time. I think about this all the time, and I'm always like, yeah, I should be charging more. Like every single project, I'm like, yeah, I should charge more for this. It really just depends. So even just setting up the background or the room that you'll be shooting in can take like at least half an hour to an hour just to set it right and make it look nice for whatever you're shooting. And then you need to fix the lighting, which also might take like, 20 minutes. And then you need to set up your camera, make sure that the angle is right, and then do a few test shots or shoots. I do a lot of videos, and videos are more time consuming. And yeah, with videos, you have to do like a million takes, like it's crazy. And so that might take, yeah, like at least a few hours. So at least like 2 hours for like a 30-second video, which is insane.
Oh, wow.
And then you need to edit it. And even a 30-second video might take like up to 4 hours to edit. Like it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So yeah, like 8 to 10 hours for a 30-second video sometimes.
I mean, it sounds like it's pretty time consuming.
It is really.
Yeah. So I will move now to my next question. And so that question is, have you ever noticed like an increase in paid collaborations? And this will be to Chazlyn, as opposed to gifted collaborations, as your time as an influencer, or just recently in the past few months?
For me personally, yeah. I'm actually newer to like the influencer realm, like despite the brands that I've worked with and like the growth that I have. But I've definitely been putting my foot down more. I think at the beginning of my journey, it's great to do those gifted collabs because it's kind of like a portfolio and you're getting kind of used to working with people in negotiation. And then after a while, like when I get a pitch email that's, saying that I need to do something gifted, I'll just say like, unfortunately, I'm not doing gifted collaborations at this time.
Yeah.
If you have a budget for micro influencers, please let me know. And 9 times out of 10, they'll be like, oh yeah, actually we do have a budget. So it's like, they don't want to tell you that they have the money to do it.
Yeah.
I think over time, I was just kind of like scared and timid because like you love a brand so much and you aspire to work with them, but they have the money to pay you and they should be paying you. So I think just like putting your foot down more, like as I was saying before, is where you're kind of going to see like the difference between how many gifted collabs you're getting versus like how many you're going to be willing to pay.
Yeah. And totally can see why that's super frustrating, especially since brands, have shared that they do have the money as opposed to being upfront about it. Val, this next question is for you. I know you kind of mentioned on it before, but what do you believe a brand's appeal is for working with influencers?
What do you mean by that exactly?
Why do you think,
why are we superior to other methods?
So why do you believe that brands, are really trying to work with influencers as of very recently, as opposed to maybe a couple years ago or so?
Yeah, I think it's, social media, first of all, we're all on it. Like everybody's on social media. We're on it all the time. And yeah, we're very influenced by what we see. And honestly, like so many people nowadays are an influencer, even if, you're just doing very small jobs or whatever, like you have influence over other people. Like anybody that follows you, they're viewing your stuff. And yeah, they see you wearing something. They're like, oh my God, I like that. I'm going to buy it. So it's the power of social media, but also the power of being an organic person, just like a normal, regular person that is using their products. And we have like testimonies. We say like, we love this. This really helped my skin. I love how this fits, So it's also the fact that they're getting an organic review from a real person as opposed to just like a model, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's getting like a real person and as well as like their platform and their audience. As well as I think that we're honestly very well priced for what it would cost to like hire an agency and hire a model and hire a videographer and photographer. Like we are much better value as well.
So, how do you believe that influencers can help brands grow?
Again, just, we have a very big audience. Even if you don't have a huge audience, even just like 2,000 followers, as long as they're very engaged and they love what you do, those are 2,000 people that you have influence over. So those are potentially 2,000 customers for that brand. So in terms of like sales, it's always very helpful, but also just, again, the testimony of having a real person try your products, show you like before and afters and review your products, and building a strong community as well. Like I feel like some of the most successful brands out there have such a sense of community. It's amazing. So yeah, just in general, the audience, the platform, the real reviews.
And then my next question, again to Chazlyn, why is being paid as a content creator something that is personally important to you?
For me personally, just like besides the fact that I am a content creator, you kind of, when you do content creation and then you see like commercials or billboards, you kind of think about like the process that, different companies have to go through, and how like it's very similar to what we do all on our own, kind of as Val was saying, with like, we do it all, like we do it all of ourselves, and it's a lot cheaper for a company to pay an influencer than it is for them to pay like all of these different people. So when you really think about that and like think about how much value like you carry, it's like you want to make sure that not only like myself, but like all of my friends, like other influencers out there are also getting paid. And it kind of like becomes like a passion sort of. So I think like because it's becoming such a big career now, it's important that we like have equality, especially because influencing is dominated by females, and that's like a whole other issue in itself. But I just think it's important that it's more awareness. Even just things like this are really great so that people kind of like see, the issues that are out there in the industry.
Yeah, and I'll actually ask the same question to you, Val. Why, is this topic so important to you to make sure that, the collaborations and content you're putting out there is getting paid?
Same thing. Yeah. I mean, just in general, equality for everyone. And again, this is a job like any other, really. As I said, it's like it can take 10 hours to create content. So, of course, we should be getting paid for our time and efforts. And I'm also full-time content creator and influencer. So this is like my job. This is my full-time job. So I need to get paid. I need to, but more than that, more than just like getting paid because this is my job, like I love it, and I do think that it is so important what we do, and we are such a valuable asset to brands. So why shouldn't we be getting paid? It just feels very like you're getting cheated when you don't get paid, you know what I mean? So I think it's just what is fair.
Yeah, well, awesome. Thank you guys for both of those responses. My next question is, how do you think that paying influencers helps a brand relationship with the content creator? That'll be to Chazlyn, sorry.
I think in general, just like for me personally, when I work with a brand and I don't even have to like ask to be paid, and they come to me and they're like, what are your rates? Like, we'd like to pay you for XYZ. Your content is actually just naturally going to be better because you love the brand at that point, even if it's a brand that you've already liked. Like if they're like being collaborative and they want to pay you and they have a great budget, like your content is naturally going to be better just because you're excited to be working with them. And I think that's better for them, because then like she was saying, like 2,000, 4,000, 30,000, whatever, those people are going to feed off of that energy, like of how much you love the brand, and those are their customers. So I think that's another thing that brands should keep in mind. Like instead of lowballing us, you might actually want to like put in the effort to pay us, because the content is going to be way better in the end.
And you mentioned going back to, instead of lowballing influencers, why do you think that's such an issue? I know this has been such a topic that's been really popular. However, do you believe that brands are getting that message that maybe it's time to start paying creators upfront?
Yeah, I hope they are. I also think because like a lot of influencers right now are so young, like a lot of us are either like out of college or in our 20s, and I think they think like they can just like run over us because we don't really know anything, or like we can't comprehend like costs and things like that. But it's one of those things where like we're super underestimated, and like we definitely know like what we're calculating and like how much time it takes. So I hope that they're seeing that. I think they are. It's even in a year I can see the growth of like how many brands have been reaching out, just like flat out saying like, what are your rates, rather than kind of beating around the bush.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. My next question is to Val. Why do you believe that brands even suggest offering gifted campaigns?
Sorry, what do you mean? Like, why do they choose to offer pay a gifted collaboration instead of offering pay?
Yes, correct.
I don't think that it is terrible for a brand to have, gifted collaborations. Like, I'm not going to be mad about it. You know what I mean? Like, we all have our different, it's fine. It's fine to make that offer. Especially if you're a smaller brand and you're kind of like, just starting out. I love working with smaller brands because I love seeing them succeed. And a lot of them start off with like gifted collaboration. So that's totally fine. There's no issue, especially as long as you have a very realistic expectation. So if it's gifted, obviously like you shouldn't be asking for crazy content or, lots of effort and time. But yeah, I think that they're just, they're kind of hung up with the old methods as well. Before, we didn't have as much leverage. They really never wanted to pay. They weren't, they were getting huge influencers without paying as well. Whereas now, like, we're all really demanding pay. So I do think that some brands are just still hung up on that. And some just don't have the budget, or some just want to do gifted collaborations, and that's fine. But I do think that a lot of brands are realizing, okay, if we want specific content, if we want high quality content, we've got to pay. And I do think that that's great. And I'm seeing it more and more as well.
Yeah, and I know you offer social media consultations with
Yeah.
brands. Is this a conversation that you find having often?
Honestly, most of the time, the consultations that I have are more geared towards it. The brand will ask me like, do you think that my concept will work? Do you think that my concept is good? Rather than, or like, not necessarily how to approach influencers, although I do think that that would be such a great thing to work on. And it can go really wrong for them also. You don't want to piss off an influencer, like you really don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can go really wrong. And it's not about like blackmailing them, but it's just that, why would you ask someone to work for you for free? Like, it's just quite disrespectful sometimes.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Our next question is, why do you think creating a way for influencers to get paid is so important, whether that is, a path of teaming up together with girls or being more open on platforms? I'll take that question to both of you, but we'll start with Chazlyn.
Yeah, even just like the community that I've built, like we all have the same passions, like whether it's fashion or beauty or whatever we're creating. So for us to like come together and like succeed as a group, like as this community, because it's actually like, even though everyone seems to be an influencer these days, like the community is rather small, and like everyone kind of knows everyone at this point. So for us to come together collectively, we're all working with like, within the same kind of like niche or brands or whatever. I just think it's really important that we all are like actively trying to, get people to hear about it in any way that we can. And there's actually been some really cool like Instagram accounts that have been advocating for this as well, which is really cool to see. And there's even been websites that are created so that you can like go on there and type in a brand and like see how much the maximum and minimum that they've paid.
Oh, wow.
So things like that is just like really like moving us forward. But like a year ago today, like that was not even around. So
Yeah.
It's definitely like a slow progress, but it's getting there.
Awesome. Thank you. And then same question to you, Val.
I was just thinking about this. I think that transparency is so important. And I think that that's something that as influencers need to work on. I feel like there's a lot of, like, we're just very secretive and not always on purpose. Like, it's not that we don't want others to succeed. It's just that there are really a lot of influencers. And we're only now starting to really make progress with getting paid and, working with big brands and stuff like that. So I do think that that has led to there being a little bit of like secrecy amongst influencers. And I think that if we all just were more transparent about our fees, about our, our content creation times and all of those things, I feel like that would be so beneficial to all of us. So So now I'm thinking about that a lot because I feel like I've never really wanted to like ask other influencers like how much do you charge, which I think is such an important question. But again, it's like it's just kind of weird to share that because no, not many people do that. But you know, there's like a standard for models, for example. Like you can Google and you can know like how much models usually charge for a photo shoot, how much
Yeah.
photographers charge. But influencers, it's just such a wide range. And I've also seen, especially with micro influencers, I've seen that there is kind of like a rise of micro influencers asking for crazy prices, which I'm not gonna like to each their own, you know, if they can get that, I'm so happy for them. But I am, because I also have a brand that I work with and I recruit influencers for them. So I know the fees that some girls charge. And I feel like there's a huge gap. There's a huge discrepancy there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're all charging like way different prices. So I would love for there to be a more standardized process of our fees.
Both of you being women of color and working with brands, do you see a difference between brands that choose, you know, specifically to work more with women of color or less? And has that affected your relationships with brands and what they're willing to pay or willing to work with you on? I'll start with Chazlyn for that question.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of like interesting because I think as like an influencer, you're noticing it more, even though like, especially for me, like that's going to happen in whatever job I do, not just influencing. So there definitely is not only an added pressure to know that like if my content and someone else's content that's like just as good were put next to each other, that they would be priced differently, that we would be treated differently. And that's just like bottom line, like something that just happens in our world, unfortunately. But I think just like even just in being professional with brands, like you just have to make sure that you're working with brands that you know have your best interests. Like sometimes I'll, you know, a brand will reach out and I notice that they have like no people of color on their page, no representation. And you don't want to be like the token influencer for that brand either. So I just think you have to be wise in your decisions and notice, even like if you have like a friend of like, say the opposite race and like you're working on the same campaign, I've seen it as well. Like you're like, oh, what did you get? And then it's like a whole different thing for them. So it's a little disheartening, but again, like that just comes with the growth of like the industry. And like, that's a whole separate topic that we have to move forward with. But I think we have to start with pay first, and then we can get into like, okay, making sure that certain types of people aren't getting left out within that pay.
Gotcha. And then same question to Val. Thank you, Chazlyn.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting question. I had never really thought about it. And I agree that I think that we should work with brands that we really think have our best interests at heart. I don't think I've ever really thought about this that much. I don't think I really have many issues with it. If anything, I've actually noticed that there is an increase in hiring just influencers of color in general, which is great. I love to see it. However, it's a little bit tricky because for sure sometimes they do want that token, you know, woman of color or influencer of color, or you know, you can just tell. And you can just tell also because they'll have like no influencers of color and then just randomly just like one girl or one gay guy, for example. They're really targeting like the LGBTQ community as well, which is great. I think that will help us make progress, but we need to choose very wisely so that we don't help brands that are not being genuine grow bigger by doing things like this. Even if we're getting paid, like I think that it would be so sad to help brands that really don't care. They just want to have the support of our communities, which I think is crazy. But I do love to see it. I think that we have stood up so much for ourselves that brands are feeling the pressure to hire us more, and that is so exciting. And if anything, honestly, at least the brands that I work with, I mostly see women of color or people of color in general, which is so exciting. I also think that that's why it's so important to have more transparency with our fees, because I've never really compared with anyone else. Personally, I don't think, at least from what I've seen, that there is a huge difference, like a racist, you know, kind of a fee difference, not from what I've seen. But I do think that it would be just great to know so that we can protect each other and help each other grow. And protect our communities and make sure that we're all getting paid fairly. I think that it's mostly just the bigger influencers that have that get paid such huge fees, and sometimes it feels kind of unfair to those of us who work just as hard. But thankfully, I am just seeing a great movement with the brands trying to hire us more.
Well, that's all the time we have. I want to thank our guests for both being here today and taking the time to chat with us. You're watching On Point, and we'll be right back.
Yo, Scott.
Hey.
I'm heading out, man. You want to ride?
No, I got my car, but I actually really need to go to the bathroom.
Oh, you know what? I was just in there. The line is like 10 people long.
You know, I think I'll just...
Dude, are you okay?
You wouldn't believe what I was just thinking. I am definitely buzzed.
Yeah.
I think I will take this, and I will take that ride home.
Smart man.
Did you see how that dog was looking at me?
I don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to talk about it.
Families don't have to talk about everything, but they should talk about how to plan for an emergency. Get tips and resources to make your family's emergency plan.
When I never graduated from high school, I realized I wanted to go back to school because I didn't want to work these back-breaking jobs the rest of my life. With the help of my father and having my son, that was all the motivation that I needed to come back to school. I felt accomplished, made me feel that I could take on whatever challenges life throws at you.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Oh, Vanessa. You gonna text her back?
Nope. I'm high. I'm gonna hit the treadmill.
You're already making good decisions when you're high.
We need to go meet the guys. I'm lit. Can you drive?
Nope. I'm high. How about they come over?
Where?
Don't make an exception when it comes to driving. If you feel different, you drive different.
Thank you for watching On Point. You can follow us on social media at CSUN On Point. You can hear us on KCSN 88.5 FM on Sunday mornings at 5:30. You can watch us on LA 36 and Santa Clarita Valley Television. For all of us here at On Point, I'm Bianca Sanchez.